So, kind of for part two on this one, Carson's going to take a very similar car, or maybe even exactly the same car, but instead of buying it, he's actually going to choose to lease it. So, leasing a car is kind of think of it as a long term rental. Renting cars are really for very short term. We're talking like days or weeks. Like you would rent a car if you're going on vacation or something. Maybe your parents or somebody who rented a car if they're just traveling across the country. So it's like very short term. Leasing a car is more of a long term sort of a rent where you're quote unquote renting it, but it's for 3 to 4 years. The thing with leasing a car is that there are certain restrictions placed on it. So one of which is, well, you have to keep the car in pretty much, well, immaculate condition. I don't mean that it has to be washed and everything has to be perfect and pristine, but in terms of like maintenance, all maintenance has to be done. You can't really neglect it in terms of that. You can't really drive the car as much as if you would have owned it. If you do a lot of traveling, then leasing it wouldn't be available to you because they would say that you have to only drive it a certain amount of kilometers. And the dealership is going to impose other sort of restrictions on you leasing a car. The reason why they're going to do this is because at the end of your lease, you're going to have to give that car back. You do have the option to buy it usually with dealerships, but the goal is that now the dealership gets a used car that's in good condition, that has a relatively low amount of kilometers on it for its age, that they can then sell. And if you talk to anybody that is a car dealership or a car salesman, it is way more flexible and an overall more pleasant selling experience selling a used car than it is a new car. New car, there's not a lot of margins for the company. It's pretty cut and dry. But with the used car, there's a lot of flexibility with payments. The dealership can make a lot of money on used cars because they can be very flexible with their payment options, and sometimes it's good for the consumer as well. So used cars are not that bad for the dealership, but they want to make sure that it's actually something sellable. So that's something about a leased car. We'll talk a little more about a leased car afterwards, but let's take a look at what Carson's doing now. So Carson's going to lease the car in the above example. That would just be the example that we did before this. So he's going to lease it for 4 years. He's going to make his down payment of $1,700 plus trade-in to cover fees for the first month payment. So pretty much all of that sort of extra money that he had for the first question, trading his old car and that $1,700, that's all going to go just towards the first month payment, and it's going to be a wash after that. All of the subsequent months' payments are going to be $295. In terms of this one, we're going to say that includes the taxes. So we're not going to have to worry about anything like times it by 1.13. The residual value of the car after 4 years is going to be 45% of the purchase price. This is going to be the value after the car, after the leasing period, and the price he could purchase the vehicle for after the end of the lease, determine the cost of leasing the vehicle for 4 years and the residual value of the car. So let's go ahead and let's just get the cost of lease. Cost of leasing. Okay, so right away, let's break this up into first month and then the other month's payment. So let's say this is going to be first month, and the cost associated with the first month is his down payment plus his trade-in value. So that's going to be for the first month. Now all of the other months, and remember, if this is for 4 years, 4 times 12 is 48, but we already have the first month here, so we're going to do 47 months afterwards. We're going to add 47 times his monthly payment, and that includes taxes. So let's go ahead and let's just calculate all this. So in our TVM solver, we can put 1,700 plus 1,200. That's just going to be straight up the first month. And then we're going to add to that the rest of the monthly finance payments. So for the 4 years, the cost of leasing is $16,765. And this is for 4 years. Okay, let's just stop and let's compare this for last time. 4 years for him buying the car cost, I believe it was around $24,000 after everything was said and done. And then after the end of 4 years, like he's done his payments. He owns that car. It's his. He doesn't have to pay for it, or he's not paying the dealership or anything like that anymore. Okay, let's take a look at what now the residual cost of the car is. Remember that at this point in time, he has to return the car, right? This, after 4 years. And now he has to either make a decision, either buy the car or return the car. So let's take a look at what the car's residual value is worth. If it's worth 45% of the purchase price, and I believe the purchase price from last time was $19,995, we're going to calculate 45% of $19,995. Let's go ahead and let's calculate that. So 0.45 multiplied by 19,995. And we get that the car is worth, after 4 years, the car is going to be worth $8,997.75. Okay, so here's Carson's options. He can, 1, return the car after 4 years. So this amount of money that he's paid for it, he's just paying somebody to use that, right? He's not actually owning anything of the car. It's not his. He has to return it. So it's not as though the $16,000 has quote unquote gone down the drain, but it's basically just paying somebody else to use the car, and he doesn't get it after 4 years. Here's the thing. Carson can now return the car to the dealership, and now he doesn't have a car. So unless he's thinking about, bicycle riding for the rest of his life, he's going to need a new one, in which case he can sign up for another lease, which he can just keep on paying, or he has the option to buy a car. Let's say Carson's like, kind of crappy. I don't have a car. I don't want to get locked into another 4-year lease and then not own anything at the end of it. So if Carson bought it, let's say Carson buys, he's going to pay for the car, the $16,765 for those 4 years, and then he's going to pay the dealership an extra about $9,000 to buy the car at the end. So plus, we're going to do 16, 7, and I'm just kind of theorizing at this point that he did this. So if Carson buys the car, he's got, and then it's his, right? It's his right off the bat, $25,762.75. So that's going to be the total cost of his car if he chooses to buy it after the 4 years with the residual value. So a little bit more than what it was from just buying it 4 years ago. $1,000 and change more, which, I mean, if you can save $1,000 and whatnot. Okay, here's a couple things. If you really like to drive the greatest, the newest, the best, the most technology-packed, radar, lasers, whatever car, then leasing might be a pretty decent idea because you are allowed to give the car back, making sure that you've only driven it within the confines of the contract, of course, but you give it back and you can hop right back into a brand new car that you can drive again for 4 years and again, hop back right into a brand new car. Pretty cool thing. A lot of people use this option because either one, they're not sure about where they're going to be in terms of their life in 4 years. Maybe you're not going to want that sports car in 4 years because, you got 3 kids and now you need a minivan. So that Ford GT that you purchased or that you leased for 4 years, you're like, I think I need something with a back seat rather than a huge engine. So I'm going to get a minivan instead. And hey, you can lease it for that time. And that's something that, is more common than you probably think. If you're pretty adamant about, this is going to be a car that, quote unquote, I'm going to drive into the ground, right? This is your car that you're going to take care of it. You're going to try to, maintain it for as much as possible. Try to get 20 years out of it, which is totally possible, probably more. You're probably better off just purchasing the thing and owning it after your financing period is done. And then, kind of doing whatever you would like to do with it. There's a couple advantages to owning a car. You don't really have any restrictions on how many kilometers you have to drive it, or kind of the condition that you can keep it in. We would like to keep it in good condition, but I mean, things happen. But with leasing a car, you don't really have that availability. You don't really have those options. You have to keep it under a certain amount of kilometers. You have to keep it within the confines of the contract that the dealership gives you, because the expectation is after the lease is up, you're going to return that car, and either they're going to sell it to somebody else as a used car, or you're going to buy it for the residual value that they kind of agreed upon, which means that you're going to probably pay a little bit extra than if you just would have bought it before. Pros and cons to a lot of them. Very different than a house, because there's not a lot of leasing to buy homes that I know of. You can rent homes, but it's not really in the same way of rent to buy. It's really just, okay, you're going to purchase a home or you're going to just rent from it. Cars are a little different, and they kind of abide by some other pros and cons that we kind of discussed here. So that will kind of wrap it up here for leasing a car.